guys, it's Michaela and you're watching FunsizedStyle. So for today's video, it's not going to be incredibly peppy or uplifting, but it has a good ending. I really debated sharing this video for a variety of reasons. I want to make sure I say everything right and I explain everything correctly so you guys understand the full picture. I've talked about doing this video for a while and I'm finally doing it. I just really wanted to make sure this was a video that I wanted to upload, and it is because I'm filming it right now. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about what happened during my pin replacement process while I was in heel traction. It was very traumatic, hence the title. But there's a lot of backstory to this that you guys need to understand before I kind of get into what happened. I just want to make sure that you guys really understand my heart and understand why I'm not upset about the process. I was at first really wrestled inside of me, which is why when it first happened for several days after the experience really wrestled inside of me, which is why I came forward to my team and said something, and in the end it turned out to be really good, and I made a change for future patients to come and for future heel attraction patients. I can't do anything about all the other hospital systems that perform this practice. This is a widespread practice from talking to other friends that have experienced this. Like I said, I can't do anything about it there, but I can do something about it here, and I did, and my team is just amazing, and like they genuinely care about my well-being and the well-being of other patients as well, obviously. That's why I want to share this, because even though it was a really traumatic experience that nobody should have ever have to go through, it did have a good ending, and I was able to make a change for future heel attraction patients to come. I have a voice, and I decided to use my voice for other patients, and I was nervous to say something because I knew they didn't have any ill will against me or mean to cause me any pain or such pain and such distress and trauma. Another thing I want you guys to understand is I have an extremely high pain tolerance, abnormally high. When I say tolerance, that means like I'm able to tolerate. That doesn't mean that it's not painful. It's just I'm able to tolerate it. Okay. For me to say something is not okay is a really big deal because, like I said, I have an extremely high pain tolerance and I've been through a lot in my life. And I also want you guys to understand that this is not for me to encourage people to speak out against every painful medical procedure. There's going to be pain in the world. This sounds so mean, but that's just the reality of life and medical complexities. But what I went through was borderline inhumane, and that's why I said something. And you'll know in your heart when something is not appropriate, and this was not appropriate. And I'll get into what happened and why and what this involved and other methods that can be used to make this process better. Other methods weren't utilized for me because there's a reasoning to a lot of why we did what we did, and I'm not sad about that. I gave full consent to this. I understood to some extent what I was going to endure because, like I mentioned in my heel attraction videos previously, 24 hours after my surgery, I had to have the pins tightened because your body recognizes them as a foreign object. It's not normal to have screws bolted into your head, and so 24 hours after the surgery they go in and while you're awake and tighten the screws with a literal screwdriver, and it is awful, and I screamed bloody murder at that time as well. It was quicker than this process was even, and this process was pretty quick, but the screws, the difference between that and what I went through is the screw was already pretty much, it was already in the bone. They just had to tighten them. So the difference between the pin tightening and having an entirely new pin put in is, like I said, the pin is already in the bone at that point. Just go in and tighten them, and it's still pretty much equally as painful, but it's not quite there. Actually, it's definitely not, but it's pretty close. But like I said, it's definitely not close to what I went through, but it is. I don't know. It was tolerable. Even though I screamed bloody murder, it was tolerable, but this, not tolerable, and it's not okay. I'm making this video as well in the small chance that other physicians that do this practice just stop to it. And if you work with a physician that does this, I urge you to encourage them to watch this video, because for me to speak out about this, especially publicly, could tell you how not okay it is. I'm not one to, I guess, complain about pain. I speak up when something's not right, but like, this is really not right. And to show you that you do have a voice, what came of this was really good. I'm going to start with why I had this done in the first place, and also how this happened, why I had it done, but also the reality is most attraction patients will not experience this. So if you come across this video because you're going into halo attraction and you want to learn about the experience and what it's like, I'm not making this video to scare you, because I want you to understand, again, this does not happen to the average halo attraction patient, and there's some things that you have to understand why this happened to me and why it's happened to other friends of mine with osteogenesis imperfecta. And this does not happen to every osteogenesis imperfecta halo attraction patient. I want you to understand that as well. So if you have OI and you are about to undergo halo attraction, I'm not here to speak to you that this is what you're going to experience, even though it is awful. It's very, very, very rare. It's common enough to where I know 2 other people that have had this done as well. So that's why I wanted to make it, so that this practice is put to a stop, widespread across all hospital systems, because the halo attraction process, like, that's a good thing. I'm talking the pin replacement process while a patient is awake. That's the practice that needs to be put to a stop. That's the practice that if you are a parent and your child is going to undergo attraction, and if they should come across this complication, I'm urging you not allow your child to go through with having a pin replaced while they're awake. It's awful. And I know a friend of mine, she has a daughter with OI, and she was 5 years old at the time, and did this to her as well. Not at my hospital system. Again, this is a widespread practice, and that just broke my heart, because I screamed bloody murder and I understood what was happening. To do this to a 5-year-old, this is not okay. It needs to stop. Can you tell I'm a little passionate about this not being a thing? Okay, that's what I want you to understand. This will probably not happen to you, but I wanted to make this video in case it does, because I think everybody should know about it. I don't want halo attraction patients who come across this video panic and think that halo attraction is a horrible experience. If you take this experience out of the equation, I had a wonderful halo attraction experience. It felt very good. I loved it. Didn't love some of the process. The results I loved, and it felt really good to be stretched out. And there are days when I miss being in traction, and I never thought I would say that. And so I just don't want halo attraction patients to be nervous when they see this video. So the other thing you have to understand is, because my curve is and was so severe, my team had to think outside of the box on how can I get the most benefit from halo attraction treatment despite my really severe curve, because there's a certain degree threshold that physicians usually consider patients for halo attraction, and if you have halo attraction, or if you have scoliosis, it does not mean that you have to endure halo attraction as well. Halo attraction is only utilized for severe scoliosis patients. I don't know what the degree threshold is for the consideration for halo attraction patients. My curve was already over 120 degrees. It exceeded the threshold by a lot. That's why I never really paid attention to that. But just know that if you're undergoing a spinal fusion, or if you have osteogenesis imperfecta and you have scoliosis and you're thinking about taking care of it, it does not necessarily mean that you will undergo halo attraction. However, the other thing I want you guys to understand is people with osteogenesis imperfecta type 3 do have really a lot more severe scoliosis than most, just because collagen makeup is insufficient, it's not good quality we make enough, but what we make is not very good, and it causes the bones to be softer, and it causes the muscles to be weaker, and it's not like muscular dystrophy where over time they're just not as strong just in general as the average person. The other thing I want you to understand is, I answered this in my Q&A, a question that I got when I explained this process over on my Instagram is the reason that the pins kept falling out because of your osteogenesis imperfecta. Most halo traction patients will not experience a pin falling out. It is a risk. This is not medical advice. You should seek licensed medical advice from a licensed medical professional. It is a risk, but most halo traction patients, I would say from what I know from personal experience from talking to other patients, it is pretty rare. But it does happen, especially the longer you're in traction, which I will get into. So I also want you to understand that if you're going into halo traction, know that that is a risk, whether you have osteogenesis imperfecta or not, but it is rare, especially if you're not going to be in traction for as long as I was, and most people are not in traction as long as I was. Most people in traction for either an increment of a 2-week period, a 4-week period, or a 6-week period. I did have one friend that went 8 weeks, I believe. Again, I went 12. I went 14. 12 connected, and then I still had the halo for 2 additional weeks while I waited to go into the OR. That is why we faced these barriers. And I know a lot of this is re-explained from the Q&A, but these are just really important information of what you should know before I explain this process, because it will make a lot more sense. The other thing is, going back to what I said, is the question I got when I explained this process on Instagram and what happened is the reason the pins kept falling out due to your osteogenesis imperfecta? The answer to that is yes and no. The reason that I say yes and no is because I was in traction, again, 3 times as long as the average halo traction patient. You are not meant to have screws bolted into your head. The human body is extremely smart, recognizes these objects as a foreign object, and tries to push them out, reject them. Through years of research, through the use of halo traction, that is why there are certain increments that halo traction typically utilize. They noted from years of research and doing this that the longer that you go in traction, the higher your risks are of these things happening, because again, this is a foreign object, several foreign objects that are being bolted into your skull. This is not a normal thing. This is not a natural thing for the body to endure. Again, the body is very smart, and so it tries to reject the pins after a while. I did not lose a pin until the 8-week mark. So if I would have gone the normal period of traction, I would not have lost any pins. They were in really, really tightly up until the 8-week mark is when I lost my very first one. Again, had I not gone the double amount of time in traction, I would not have lost a pin, would not have had to go through this pin replacement process while awake, because as you guys know, I obviously went through with the halo surgery itself with the original placement of the entire halo surgery under general anesthesia, and that's how they do. Really important to know as well. Again, had I not gone through that, I would not have experienced this. My team had to get really creative on how I could get the most benefit from this treatment, because my curve is and was so severe. Part of that decision was going the longer than typical amount of time in traction so that my spine could stretch out as much as possible. There comes a point where the spine will not stretch out anymore, because you can only stretch it so much, especially when you have really, really severe scoliosis as mine. But they felt that this was 3 months was the appropriate amount of time for me, and we agreed that the potential inconveniences or risks that could be involved with extending the treatment, the benefits outweighed the inconveniences or risks that could happen of me being in traction. The risks of being in traction longer is, again, the pins falling out, an infection, things like that. But other than that, halo traction is a very safe and effective treatment for scoliosis. So those are a lot of the things that I want you to know before I go into this process. I know we haven't even gotten to the experience yet, but these are just such important points that I want you to know, because had I not told you this, you would think that this was the most horrible thing anybody could do to somebody, and that was not their intent. Their intent is good. Somebody on my Instagram said, like, you're being too nice. And no, I'm not. You have to understand these people's hearts. They're such good people. I've been with them for 12 years. Had I had issues, I would not have allowed them to perform a life-saving surgery on them. They are my heroes. They are such good people. But healthcare is run by humans. We are not perfect. In healthcare, there's so many times where a policy or a procedure is how a procedure is done, and this is how it's done, and they've never stopped and thought about how they're doing it, what they're doing it, and the implications that they could have on patients, because that's how they've done it for so long. And if nobody speaks up, of course they're gonna keep doing it because they think it's okay. And I don't blame them. Like, it was really quick. It saved me like 4 or 5 hours at the hospital. The surgery itself would only be 15 minutes, not even 15 minutes. It took, like, for her to pop the pin in, it took like 2 minutes, 2 minutes? Probably not even that. It felt like eternity, but it was probably 60 seconds. So I totally understand why they do it, because it's quick. You spend an hour in pre-op, spend 2 hours in post-op, and there's this, you gotta have a whole crew, obviously, for a surgery, and you have to have time in the OR when a surgeon already has a very full OR schedule a surgery for something that literally takes 60 seconds. You're not 60 seconds, but this was so awful. I don't think anyone should ever have to undergo 60 seconds of this. And for me to say that this big ordeal needs to be done instead of a 60-second ordeal tells you how bad those 60 seconds were. And I'll get to it. But again, if nobody speaks up, they're going to keep doing it because it's okay, because patients are accepting it. It's tolerable, it's a lot quicker, it's a lot easier, more efficient. I get it. I totally understand where they're coming from, because anything that we do in our life, we want to be as quick and do things as quick and efficiently as possible. And I mean, I totally get it. So when you're in a situation, you have to know a few things. You have to know someone's heart. These people are such good people. They are my heroes. And in the email that I wrote to them, I ended it. I would still not have any other team be saving my life than you guys. And that was after that horrifying experience. That's how much I know that their hearts are good. I would still not want any other team but them to have had saved my life. And you have to understand why a process. It's quick, it's efficient. It's 60 seconds. That's how long it took her to put the pin in my head. 60 seconds. It was the longest 60 seconds of my life, but that's why it's done. Again, nobody speaks up. And that's why so many issues are happening today. It's because nobody is willing to speak up. And you can do this with care and compassion, and I will teach you how to do that today. But you also, again, have to know people's hearts. So if you're truly not with a good team, you need to get out. Like, I hear people say it, like, my doctor's horrible, they never return my calls, they do this, and they complain about their doctor, and it's like, you are hiring that doctor, essentially. Like, they work for you. If you don't like them, and if you're not treating them well, get out, leave. Like, you are in control of your care. If I were to have these experiences, I would not be with my team, and I love them to death. Like, they are the best people. They are my heroes, and they are the most important people in my life, and they are like my family, and I see them more than I see most of my family. I just want you to know how highly I speak of them as I share this experience, because it ended so well, and the response that they gave me will show you how compassionate and caring they are. But again, you have to understand, healthcare is run by humans. Do not go perfect, and that is why I worry so much patients that are hospitalized right now, because hospitals are still locked up like prisons and allowing patients to be alone. And that is such a dangerous and vulnerable place for patients to be alone, especially if they're not able, in a state to not be able to communicate. It's horrible. That's a whole nother story. I think so highly of these people, and I could just cry because they mean so much to me, and that's why I debated and wanted to share this, because I didn't want you to think I was talking bad about them. Like, they are good people. This was something that was brought to their attention. This was just something I wanted to bring to their attention, that this is not appropriate. And again, it'd be different if it just happened at my hospital system. I think I would have made an even bigger deal than I did. But knowing that this is a widespread practice, knowing that this is how physicians are taught to execute this process, made me realize like that's how they're taught. So if patients don't speak up, that nothing's going to change because that's how they're taught. But now that I've relayed this message to my team, my surgeon's going to remember this. And they do, and they changed, and you'll hear. But I'm so blessed to be able to have a team that I can come to about anything, even really hard stuff like this. I know this video is already like 40 minutes long, but hear me out. The reason again is because I had the pins in so long. So 8-week mark, lost one, big deal. Okay, I have some extras, but then I lost the other one, and you have to have a certain amount of pins in order for the weight to be distributed in the halo to be able to pull up safely on your spine and not cause any neurological issues. So when I lost the second one, that's when we did this process, and I understood what this was going to involve. Again, I had the pin tightening before, and that was pretty awful, but I was like, I survived it. I was like, I guess I can get through a pin replacement. We went that day, and they told me that they were going to get a shot or a numbing cream. I think it's called like EMLA cream, but let me tell you, when you're having something bolted into your head, numbing cream ain't gonna do squat. I explained this in my previous, or the next video that you'll see, but I think a lot of people think, or no, 2 videos from now, a lot of people think that the pins just kind of go through the skin into the head, but they're actually cured into the bone in your skull. So there would be like a little, I guess, hole in my bone, but it eventually obviously heals up, and it's probably already healed up. It doesn't even hurt when I got my halo off after my spinal fusion surgery. My head didn't even hurt. I figured maybe they'd use a shot like they said, but they didn't. They just used a numbing cream. She comes in, and she's so amazing, and just my surgeon's entire staff is like impeccable. And so she comes in and like puts this on my head, so you can see the area. I think it's this side. I can't tell, I'm a little far from the viewfinder. You can tell there's a side of above my eyebrow where I have 2 holes. So that's where, the one that I have the 2 holes, that's where I did the pin replacement process, because she had to create a new hole. She put the new one in because I put a pin in the same hole. And what's really interesting, at least for my body, when the pins would fall out, like the hole would already entirely close up within like less than 24 hours. Like the body is amazing. Anyway, so she comes in and like puts this cream like right here and all above my forehead, and like a mini surgery. So they even put like that orange antiseptic stuff on it. So my surgeon did that when she came in. I had to wait 15 minutes for it to work, and so she put it on and then left, and then like let us sit there for 15 minutes. This is where it gets like a little bit hard to talk about, just because it's so hard to relive these memories. And I'm blessed with a great memory, which is a blessing and a curse all at the same time, because some things you do want to forget, but in this halo traction process, I actually don't want to forget any of it because it's all such a big part of my story. So my surgeon comes in, and I was like pretty nervous, especially when they didn't even end up using a shot. They just used the EMLA cream or whatever, and you have to understand, this is not just a skin application. I'm about to have a screw that you can buy from the hardware store bolted into my head. She comes in and kind of like surprised or like taken back at the amount of people that were entering my room. I thought it was just going to be her. I think there was like a couple students and then the orthotist, and because a halo ring is considered a prosthetic, like a prosthetic arm or leg, so an orthotist has to be present when this kind of stuff is happening. But my surgeon was the one that like put the pin in my head. So there's all these people in the room, and I'm like laying back in my wheelchair. My wheelchair has like this tilt mode, and so I'm like kind of laying there. You have to have one person. Let me tell you this as well. The goal was to put, that was our goal, but she wanted a minimum of 1, obviously. I was doing fine with the one that I lost previously before I lost the second. They do put 1 extra in during the original halo surgery in case something like this happens. So there's all these people, and I'm laying there. There's one nurse, like, I have to hold my eyes closed, but like I can obviously close my eyes, but like they had to be held closed because you can't open your eyes during this. Like if you even see from my surgery video, they had to make sure that my eyelids were closed, and they even had to put like tape over my eyes during the surgery. Like they just really want to make sure that your eyes are protected, so you'll see that during the surgery footage. I don't know what happened. I should ask her sometime, but you can see they kind of paused and like I heard my surgeon say, oh, make sure eyelids are closed, and I'll roll that footage. No, I don't know the reason why the eyes have to be so tightly closed. But anyways, that's irrelevant. There's one person holding my eyes closed and then like making sure they stay closed. The orthotist, I think, somebody was holding my head at a certain angle that my surgeon could the pin. Pretty sure I had like a tachycardia episode while the pin was going in, but we'll get to that in a minute. She starts, bless her soul, trying to like talk me through it, and they're all just like being so amazing and gracious, and they're like, okay, are you ready? And I was like, I guess so. Like, how ready can you be to have a screw bolted into your head while awake? They were just kind of like talking me through it, and now I'm going to do this and this, and then it was going through the skin. It wasn't too bad. Can't believe I'm saying that. It wasn't too bad. But again, that just tells you how crazy my pain tolerance. And then I knew the minute that she hit, like when it started to go into the bone, because this is when it gets awful. Spinning the pin, because, you know, it just kind of bolts in there like a regular screw, and so she's spinning it and turning it and tightening it, and she gets near the bone and getting ready to go into the bone. And this is where crap hits the fan. I scream bloody murder. I am yelling so loud. I'm pretty sure anybody in the waiting room heard me yell and probably thought, what are they doing to that poor girl? I did not know that my lungs had the ability to allow me to yell as loud as I did. I did not even know that I had the physical ability, the lung capacity to yell as loud as I did, scream out in pain. And I think I said like, I'm suffering or something. I remember saying something, and they were just like feeling really bad. And you have to understand that the moment that I realized like this isn't okay, I obviously realized it in that moment, but even after, I was just kind of like such in the moment, such a blur, like it just was like kind of what happened. So I'm screaming bloody murder, and I'm pretty sure that like it was only like 30 or 60 seconds, but it literally felt like eternity, you guys. It was the longest 60 seconds of my life. I never felt so much physical pain in my life than I did in those 60 seconds. And you have to understand as well that I've had 3 broken limbs at one time, and the pain that I felt getting the pin replaced was 10 times more pain than I ever felt with those 3 broken limbs at one time. Somebody was saying when I was sharing with them about this experience, I guess the head is more sensitive as it is anyways. I did not know that, but I do now, and I can attest to that. I'm screaming bloody murder. I was actually worried. I remember I was laying there and screaming and yelling and crying, and I was actually worried that I was going to pass out. Let me know if there's like a name for this, but where your body is in like such a fight or flight, like trauma response. Like I just felt like I was gonna pass out because I was like screaming so loud, and I didn't know that like my lungs even had the capacity to scream, to allow me to scream as loud as I did. I didn't even know I had the vocal cords to scream as loud as I did, and it was horrible. And like I said, it was only 30 seconds, 60 seconds. That's why I took the time to explain to you all this backstory stuff, because I knew the story itself wouldn't be as long, but that's pretty much it as what they do. Like even like you have to turn it and twist it and tighten it in there. It was the worst 30 seconds of my life, 60 seconds, whatever. It was very embarrassing because these are people that I love so much and that have seen me grow up and that are family to me. Here I am in their presence screaming bloody murder. I don't know if they've ever heard somebody scream as loud as I did. I'm pretty sure they probably have because they deal with little kids, but it was very embarrassing. They kept telling me how strong and brave I was. I did not feel strong and brave. I was a 22-year-old screaming bloody murder while they did this to me, and I just will never forgive myself for that. It was very embarrassing, but I never felt. I wish there was a way I could possibly describe to you how much physical pain that I felt, but there are truly no words for me to describe this. I know you may think it's one screw, but unless you've had something literally bolted into your skull, not into the skin, into the skull bone in your head, you have no idea. The goal was 2, but minimum of 1. And once they saw when crap hit the fan, they obviously didn't want to put me through that a second time. And so we only got 1. And that was the hardest part of the experience, was afterwards realizing how my body reacted. It was like, and it was weird, it was not even controllable. I was like hysterical. It was instantaneous. It was as soon as she got to the bone and finally started to bolt it into the bone part, once it got past the skin, that's when crap hit the fan. And it's just, to think that this is done to some kids that don't understand breaks my heart. These people that I love so much, and here I am 22 years old and screaming. I don't even think I could scream as loud now as I did in that moment. It was amazing how still I was able to hold while I was screaming, because I knew a screw was being bolted in my head and I could not move. Like, God gave me the strength to hold still, even though I was screaming bloody murder and my legs were shaking a mile a minute. It's just very embarrassing, and I just feel so embarrassed that they had to see me in that state, especially because they just mean so much to me, and I'm 22, you guys. It's just embarrassing. You have to understand, you will never understand the amount of physical pain that I felt, and I wish that that is a moment that I could erase from my memory, but I can't, and I don't think I'll ever be able to. And that was the other thing that I debated making these videos, because there's not much more to say other than of what the experience was like. There's just aren't words to describe to you the trauma that I went through in that moment. But it was the worst 60 seconds of my life. I literally felt like I was dying for a minute. And I'm not being a drama queen here. I just wish, I don't wish that you could feel or know. No one should ever have to know this pain. It's just not okay, and it needs. That happened, and we went home. I was just down for the count. So you guys know the first week of Halo is the worst, and so since I had a brand new pin, my skull had to get used to the pin again. So I went through the whole first week pain that I went through the first time back in September, and this was in November that this happened. God gave me the strength to get through that day, because I literally felt like for a moment that I was going to pass out or die. My heart was just beating out of my chest, and I just remember screaming as loud. Like, you guys have to understand the limited lung capacity I have. I don't think it's normally possible for somebody with the lung capacity that I have to be able to scream as loud as I did. And that's what is so crazy about the body, of how it responds to certain situations. And so I was just really shaken up about what just happened. It was a blur. It was like, what just happened? How did I get through that? What had just been done? Obviously I consent, and that was the thing too, like, obviously I consented to this, and I knew what they were going to do, but nothing, like, I knew it was going to be bad, but nothing could have ever prepared me for what was going to come. Nothing could have ever prepared. And a common, before I get into the resolution, there's a few common questions that I received of some potential solutions and why they weren't utilized. So the first one is twilight anesthesia. When you get your wisdom teeth out, when you know, like when people start acting really funny and they, like with the laughing gas, and they're just kind of out of it. But they're like, you know, they're out, but they're not like totally out. So twilight anesthesia, my surgeon specializes in OI, that's everything about OI. Twilight anesthesia is incredibly dangerous for someone with osteogenesis imperfecta, especially osteogenesis imperfecta type 3, because with twilight anesthesia you do not have any respiratory support, so you can easily go into respiratory failure. So I actually have a friend that passed away from having twilight anesthesia. I don't know if she must have not known it was bad, and her doctor must have not known it was bad. That's why that is not utilized, and obviously my surgeon knows that, so that's not an option for patients with OI. And then the other option, or the other thing was, did they give you any sort of like pre-medication? They did them. No, I did not have any IVs, I did not have any pain medication, no Motrin, no Tylenol, nothing. Completely cold turkey, like awake, pain, medication free, nothing. Like all natural, just went for it. I don't know why that was the case either, but I talked to, again, my friends that went through this, and that's how they did it as well. So you have to understand too that, again, this is a widespread practice. To be honest with you, I'm being completely and blatantly, I don't think any amount of pain medication would have helped because the pain was so intense. So with this kind of thing, there's just not, Motrin would not have done squat. They tried to pre-medicate me with Motrin. For my pin tightening process 24 hours after my surgery, that did nothing either. So it doesn't work. Like, it's deep into your skull, and you're, again, having a screw bolted in. So it wouldn't have worked. And I explained in the beginning of why surgery is not typically done. I totally get it. I mean, it's 60 seconds. That would be like the world's fastest surgery, right? Like, I've had tubes put in, and I think that took longer. I've had tubes put in my ears when I was a child, and I think that probably took longer than her bolting the screw in my head. Like, it'd be the world's quickest surgery, and that's a lot to put somebody under for something that quick. I get it, but that's the way it should be done because that's the most humane way. I never suffered more than I did in that moment. The suffering, the pain, and the trauma that I felt is something that I hope nobody ever has to go through. No, there are other people that have, from talking to my friends, and that just breaks my heart, and I don't understand why people don't speak up. I don't understand it. When something is not right, you know in your heart when something's not okay. You know in your heart when all measures have been taken or not. You know in your heart. Why don't you say something? Because nobody before me, again, this is not just a Michigan thing. This is done, I have a friend in Delaware that had this done, California. This is done everywhere. I don't understand. It's because patients before me didn't speak up that I had to suffer. But I refuse to allow somebody that I love ever suffer through that, what I did. And I've gone through a lot. I've had 3 broken limbs at one time without pain medication before I got to the hospital. That was nothing compared, well, I mean, it was at the time, but little did I know there was more pain than a human body could ever endure. That the pain replacement process was 3 times as much. I don't speak of pain. I don't complain of pain. I don't understand because it's not the fault of my team. Like, yeah, they should not have done it this way, and yes, people should know that it's not okay to bolt something into somebody's head while they're awake. That's how they're taught, and that's not their, again, it's because nobody speaks up that I had to suffer. If somebody before me at my hospital would have spoken up, I would not have had to suffer. I would not have to tell you this story today. And the reason that I share this is not only in hopes that maybe another physician that does this puts a stop to this, but also I promised to bring you guys through all the parts of this halo attraction journey. I promised to share with you the easy parts, the hard parts, the awful parts, the traumatic. This was traumatic, and I don't use those words flimsily. Like, I don't toss those words around. The rest of the traction process was fine. It was a breeze. Like, well, it wasn't a breeze, but it was very doable. It was a lot easier than I thought. It felt a lot better than I thought it would. This happened during this was part of my journey of halo attraction. And no, it's not common. And no, you probably won't experience this, but apparently it does happen to other people, and it needs. And I promised to share with you all this, and this is why I debated to film this, because I don't want to talk bad about anybody, because nobody had ill will. You have to know people's hearts. They did not have ill will against me. And you'll hear about that in the resolution of this. I love these people with all my being. I did not come to them with anger, but I was passionate that this was not okay. And there's a way to do that, because in a healthcare team, you're a team. You work together. You have to communicate. If I didn't communicate, they would keep doing this to patients, just like they have for a long time. So that was my experience, and after I left the next day, and that day of, and the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and it wrestled within me whether I should say something. So before I said anything to them, that's when I reached out to my friends. I asked them if this was done to them. I asked people I know in the halo attraction community that have undergone this, and because my approach was going to be different had this only been a Michigan thing, because that tells me that's really not okay. But this is how surgeons are taught. to be quick and efficient. That's good in a lot of things. I guess my main purpose in making this video is teach you to speak up. It wrestled within me the next few days on whether I should say something, and I struggled with wanting to say something because I know they're hard, and I know that they're good people, and you'll know when people are good. I've never had any prior issues with these people. They are literally angels on earth. They are literally my heroes. They saved my life. They took me with open arms when so many surgeons turned me away, and they value my life, and they want me here for a long time. When other surgeons told me, top-notch surgeons supposedly, like that deal with OI spines from all over the world, told me to just live with what I had left, because I think it's because I refused bisphosphonate treatments, but that's for a whole nother video. I'd not be here today without them, and they are my family. They've seen me grow up, and I did not want to hurt their feelings because I know their heart. And so I wanted to be careful with how I worded this, and I wanted to write it in an email. And I can take the time, so I could take the time to write it and say all the right things. Basically just explained everything that I told you guys of, I know that you didn't have any ill will against me. I'm writing this to tell you I'd never felt as much physical pain as I did in that moment. And it's pain that I don't want any other patient to ever have to. And I explained that I understood this was a widespread practice. I didn't want them to think that I thought it was just them. I wanted them to know that it wasn't just them that does this. And I had educated myself on that. And so I understood that that's how it was taught. I said, you've known me for a long time, and you know pain is not something I speak of. So for me to come to you today, say something, speaks volumes. And I just don't want any patient to ever have to undergo this. And I wanted to come to you today, express my concern for how this is done. And I told them that if I lost another one, which I ended up losing 4, that I would have to go into and have it replaced. And that's how all patients should have to do it as well, because it's not okay. And I don't want patients to ever have to experience this. And I said, I don't know why other patients haven't come forward. And I told them I had tears in my eyes with writing, because I didn't want to say anything wrong, because I know their hearts, and their hearts are good. I just told them it was more pain than I'd ever felt in my life, and just the trauma that I felt, and how I'd never felt so much physical pain than I did in that moment. And I apologized for being loud and vocal, and people tell me I had no reason to apologize, and I know that, but I just wanted them to know, like, I'm 22, like, I just feel bad about yelling, but my body I explained my body went into fight or flight, and it was not in my control at that. And I ended it with how much they mean to me, and that they're my heroes, and I just wanted to come forward to them with this for other patients in the future. And it's because nobody before me spoke up that I had to endure this, and there's no other team that I would rather have saving my life than them. And they wrote me back, well, the one nurse wrote me back, and then my surgeon and I talked on a video chat, and they both had tears in their eyes when they read my email. They were so impressed. The compassion that I had in that email. I'm not going to read you the whole email, because that's meant to stay private. It's pretty much everything I said here. I know their hearts are good, and they didn't mean to cause me ill will or trauma. And they had tears in their eyes when they read the email, and they felt so bad of what this did to me. And they said I could come to them with anything, anytime. They were just feeling really, really bad. Like I said, they don't do this often, because it does not happen often. Most patients are only in traction for a period of 2, 4, or 6 weeks. I did it double. So my circumstances were very different. But again, because I knew of other people that had this happen too, that's why I wanted to say something. That's when my surgeon explained to me that they will not put another patient through that again. They were glad that I spoke up and felt comfortable coming to them about this. I just wanted them to know my heart and know that I was not angry with them. I didn't want any ounce of anger to come in that email, because I was not angry, because I knew their heart. I just don't want other patients to experience this trauma. And so I'm so proud of the change that I was able to future halo traction patients at my hospital. I can't do anything about the hospitals that my friends go to that had this done. I don't know why they didn't speak up, but I did. And I did it with care and compassion, and I made a difference for future patients to come. So that was the story. That's pretty much it. It really rocked me to my core, and I did not expect that part of the journey at all, but it was part of the journey. Brought yet another opportunity in those 14 weeks to advocate, and I have a voice, and I decided to use it, and I did it with compassion. And I'm so grateful for a team that is caring and compassionate, because not all healthcare teams would act, not all healthcare teams would respond. They would say, well, that's just how we do it. That was not what they said at all. So that tells you as well their good hearts, because I know of people that have come forward to their healthcare teams about things, and they responded with, well, that's just the policy, or that's how it's done, and that's not what they said to me. They are not going to put a patient through that again. Well, as long as my surgeon is there. When my surgeon retires, I don't know what happens, but just don't allow yourself to go through that. Awake man to go into surgery to have that done. I promise you. I wanted you to know that they vowed to never put a patient through that again. Again, it's because nobody said anything, that I had to suffer, and that I have this story to tell you today, because nobody said something. Nobody. But look how quick a change was made because I said something. And we all still love each other so much. We're all still friends. That's what compassion is, because I know their hearts. And that's it. That's all I have to share with you. That's what happened. There's really nothing more to that story. I'm just grateful for a team that I can come to with anything, with difficult stuff, with the hard stuff, with the easy stuff, with anything. And it was a very proud moment to know how much of a difference I made for future Halo Attraction patients. Thank you guys for listening to this extremely long video. There was just a lot that you had to understand beforehand of why the things were done the way that they were done, and I completely understand each and every one of them. I'm just grateful for a voice, and I'm grateful for a team that listens and takes action and cares. They're just such good human beings, and I'm so grateful to have them a part of my village, and they are my heroes. They're my healthcare heroes. They are like family, and it's a huge part of my life. It was a shake to my core experience, but what came of it was really good, and that's just yet another example of how really bad situations can turn into really good things. As you guys will see in the next, my recap video too, I obviously ended up losing 5, and they knew not to put me through that, but by the time I lost that many, that's why we just moved my surgery up. I just wanted you to hear the good news of what came of this, and that I'm grateful for a team that listens and cares, and really cares about my well-being and the well-being of all their patients, and we're just very close, and it was really hard and embarrassing for me to have them see me like that, but what came of it was so good, and I hope that this story inspires you to speak up when you know something's not right. It's going to be pain in the world, but you'll know when something, bottom line, not okay. You can't take away all the pain in the world. That's not realistic. I'm sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just life. And I hope that this inspires you to know that things can change when you speak up, because my story, my experience is proof of that. If you have any other questions about this experience, I'm pretty sure I was pretty descriptive, but if you do have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm grateful for my healthcare heroes that saved my life, and that we were able to make a change together. And thank you for loving me through this journey, and you guys also supported me so much that day, so I just wanted to say thank you again. And I'll link that post in the comments below as well, the Instagram post, because the outpouring of love was like I've never received before, and I want you guys to read that. Like, people are so good, and you guys are awesome, so thank you for supporting me through the hardest days of my life, like that one. Yet another experience that good things can come from not so great experiences. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!